you can now have an exercise in translating these into positive and desirable outcomes. So, for example, this one, the first one, during your problem identification exercise, some of your participants might have this problem. They would say that people find it difficult to locate and access your CEC for various reasons. Maybe it's in an area or in a room in your municipality that's really hard to find, or maybe it's far or not as accessible to many people. Maybe, for example, if it's on the third or fourth floor of your municipality, maybe some people like senior citizens will really find it difficult to go there. Okay, so this is an issue. Now, if you want to focus on answering this issue, you need to convert this into an outcome statement. So here is an example of how you can convert it into a positive desirable outcome. So now it becomes to improve people's access to the CEC and its services. So now we have one sample outcome statement that we will use for this exercise. A second sample problem that has been identified: many people in your community are not ICT literate or are not computer literate, so they are wary, maybe even afraid of going to the CEC. So again, that's a problem because you would end up with not many customers or clientele. Okay, so if you want to, and then in converting this into positive desirable outcome, it becomes like this: to raise the level of ICT literacy in the community through your community e-centers. So now we have two sample outcome statements. Okay, then which brings me now to introducing the performance matrix. So this matrix is what you will use during your design and development of your M&E system. So if you notice, the matrix is made up of 4 columns. Okay, and the matrix is a tool that defines the outcomes and plans for the design of your results-based monitoring and evaluation system. So I've already placed here in the outcome column the 2 sample outcomes that we have come up with in the previous slide. Right? So moving on to step 3, once we have already identified your outcome statements, the next step now is to identify and to select key performance indicators that you will use to monitor your outcomes. Okay, so indicators are basically measuring tools that you use in order to keep track of the progress of your project in order to achieve your outcomes and eventually your goals. So in coming up, indicators answer questions like: how will you know success, or how will you know that your CEC has achieved it? How would you see it? What will it look like? What will success or achievement look like? So this is where you can use indicators to answer this question. Another one would be: are you moving towards achieving your desired outcomes for CEC? So this means that the indicators that you are going to use to measure outcome is actually going to measure the results. Okay, we want to measure tangible results of your CEC, whether or not your CEC has really accomplished something, or maybe there are some factors that limited you from attaining your outcomes. So in measuring results, this is why we are referring to your monitoring and evaluation as results-based monitoring and evaluation, which is beyond just counting the number of students that you taught or the number of computers that you bought. Those are not outcomes. Those are just activities or outputs. Right? So how do you assess indicators? So in selecting indicators, you can use this criteria. Okay, so indicators 1 should be an indicator should be directly measuring an observation. All right. For example, if you want to use an indicator, maybe number of people going to your CEC. So it directly measure because you can count the number of people actually coming in to your CEC. All right. It's objective. It's not subject to bias. It's not subject to individual interpretation. So the indicator that I mentioned, number of people attending or going to your CEC in a given day, that's objective because anyone can count, and you can, you cannot selectively count people and disregard others who come into your CEC. So if you do that, obviously that will destroy the objectivity of your indicator. It should be adequate in the sense that your indicator should measure what you really want to measure. Okay, it doesn't miss out on specific elements that you want to collect. Okay, it should be quantitative. Well, this would mean that you can count. You can use your indicator to as a tool to count data elements. You can perform mathematical or statistical analysis. So this is what you mean by having a quantitative indicator. And I would highly encourage you to disaggregate the data when you are using our indicator. Again, back to my example. If you just want to use the indicator like the number of people who go to your CEC in a given day, all right, it falls under the first 4 criteria and maybe the next 2 here, but it's not that complete or valuable because if you just merely count people, you might miss out on a lot. So you need to disaggregate it. For example, you need to disaggregate it according to gender, or according to age group, or according to sector. So for example, why instead of just counting the number of people who go to your CEC, why not have an indicator that is disaggregated like number of women versus number of men who go to your CEC, or versus number of youths, number of senior citizens, etc. So that is one example of disaggregating your indicator. Okay, again, it should be practical in the sense that it's easy. The tool that you are using is easy to do. So for example, the example I mentioned, you will just count. It's quite practical, and at the end it should be reliable. The indicator should be able to collect data in a way that people will trust in it, that it can be the same instrument can be used in other areas. So it has to be reliable because people in the end, when you report your evaluation, people would need to be trusting of the data you present. So you have to show that you're collecting your data in a reliable manner, right? So coming back to the performance matrix, we are now going to fill up the next column on indicators. So let's look at these examples. Okay, so as I mentioned, for the first outcome, you would want to improve people's access to the CEC in its services. So at sample indicator for this, right, there you can think of other indicators that you would want to measure this outcome. I put an example here. The average daily number of people, and again I would suggest you disaggregate the people, average daily number of them who come to your CEC in a given month. So if you look back at the different criteria, I guess that this would fulfill all of the criteria that we have identified in the previous slide. Okay, so this is fairly straightforward. You will just count the number of people who come in a given day, in a given month, but you need to do averaging here. Okay, the next outcome, you would want to raise the level of ICT literacy in the community through the CEC. So the outcome is, interesting. It has a sense of nobility in it because you want to raise standards of how people use information, for example, or to be more ICT literate. But if you analyze this, it's actually quite tricky to measure. So for example, I have 2 examples of indicators here. The first one is the percentage increase in the ICT literacy levels of your users. Okay, again, it looks straightforward. You will just measure an increase in the percentage, but I would be careful in using this, because first you would need to determine what do you actually mean by ICT literacy, and what do you exactly mean by increasing the level of ICT literacy. Okay, so for example, does increasing the level mean that you start with people from zero knowledge, or you would want people to for example, if you would want to define ICT literacy, for example, as a person who knows how to turn on and off the computer, or knows how to use word processing, or knows how to use social media like Facebook. All right, so this is a challenge for you in coming up with a definition of ICT literacy. Again, I would suggest that you look for other sources that will give you a good working definition of what ICT literacy means. Okay, another indicator is percent increase in the number of ICT literate people. Again, the challenge here is to define what we mean by ICT literate people. But so far we have done the first two columns here in our performance matrix. Okay, so this ends part 1 of our discussion.